Hey guys, Taki back, and now we are looking at how class fantasy will work in Legion. They didn't cover every single class and all the reworks, but they gave us a few key examples, and they did state we will have detailed, extremely detailed blogs for each spec, not class, each spec, being uploaded in the coming days. Every time one of these goes up, I'll do an in-depth analysis of it, but for now, let's just cover what they showed at the WoW panel. So, what makes a strong class fantasy? Immersive, distinct, empowering. Now, more empowering. They gave the example of these three gamey mechanics and how they're being improved in Legion. I do the quotations with improved because the Death Knight change really scares me. I play a monk and a Death Knight at the moment, but anyway. So, Death Knight runes. Death Knights, the way they work is, as you can see from this little fella here, they have runes on their weapons. They have the Unholy runes, the Death runes, the Frost runes, out of order, but whatever. And you need certain rune combinations to your ability. So you need 2 Death runes, which are these purple ones, and then you can't do anything which requires Death runes. You then need to do stuff which only has the blue runes or the green runes. So what often happens is, if you're fresh to Death Knight, you spend a lot of time just watching your runes quite carefully. But once you've gotten quite used to it, it's fairly organic, and you just sort of rotate. You don't even think about it. It's very rare that I actually need to think or watch very carefully my runes as a blood DK because it's such organic gameplay. Yeah, okay, it's blood, but you know, it's a very natural rhythm. So what they're going to do instead in Legion for Death Knights is we will still have runes, but just one type. Yeah, so we're just going to have 6 runes. Or 6 runes, maybe in ruins. But yeah, just 6 runes. I'm not a big fan of this. This is a big glaring sign of dumbing down, in my opinion. Hopefully it will play well, and with a few other changes it will be great. But personally, this thing, not a fan. Next, Fury Warrior ability charges. This is for all charge-based mechanics, but they're just showing Fury as an example. The way that Fury works, as you can see here, is you require certain buffs with certain charges, and then when you have a buff active and a charge, you can use your abilities. Scrapping all of that. Now it's going to be, when this effective active, you can use X. They want to remove charge mechanics where it's not engaging, not fun gameplay. They don't want it locked behind RNG. They don't want you to have amazing rotation and then dead rotation for 30 seconds. It will be binary with 1 or 2 maybe flare. But again, much like the Death Knight runes, they're promoting binary gameplay. Hopefully this gets more interesting when it comes to, you know, artifact customization and enhancing that way. But ugh. Arcane Mage Mastery. Now if you don't know how Arcane Mages work, basically the more mana they have, the more damage they deal. Pretty straightforward. Now they've got one spell called Arcane Blast. Every time they press the button, it deals more damage, but it costs more mana. They have a second spell, which resets their stacks. So it stacks up every time you cast it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, caps at 4. And what the whole gameplay rotates around is building stacks, spending stacks, building stacks. You know, so basically it's 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2. Lazy macros exist. It's not great. Some people love it, some people hate it. The big issue with it though is that if you make one mistake, you screw up all of your mana, you completely tank your damage. So now what they're going to do is it's going to be a buff, not a debuff, a buff, and it's going to have charges. So not like Fury Warrior charges, but different. Yeah, it seems all a bit kind of bleh, but it sounded interesting-ish from the way it explained it. It was very vague. I'm just going to have to really wait until we get the in-depth Arcane blog. But they're changing Arcane. It's no longer going to be a debuff you ignore. Apparently, it will actively change your gameplay. Hopefully, it works in with like Destruction Warlocks, where you get big visual effects as you get Burning Embers. I don't know, but it could be cool. Also, you're getting a new Mastery, which, ba-boom, new Mastery Savant. So the way that Mastery will work for Arcane is it increases your total mana. It will have like an active effect, and it increases your damage. So you'll have very strong control. They're sort of rebuilding this whole control aspect and mentality. Again, pretty interesting, but we'll have to wait for the in-depth review to really get into the Arcane in-depth. Gnome swag. So, distinct Subtlety Rogue. This is broken as all levels of insanity for PvP. But whatever, so Shadow Dance was the like iconic sub-rogue ability, but the issue rogues often have is you have combat, then Assassination, and Subtlety, and they all felt kind of the same, just combat used slightly bigger weapons, Assassination used drippy weapons, and Subtlety used stealth. So, Shadow Dance is now passive, and every time you use a finishing attack or ability, there is a 20% chance you will re-enter stealth. When you re-enter stealth, you will have immunity to stealth breaking from damage. So imagine you're dueling someone and you're like halfway through a cast. Like, okay, let's say that you're a mage, you're an arcane mage, you're casting your spell. They use Eviscerate, they get a proc, they go invisible. Your spell fluffs because they're invisible, that you've lost your target. They come out of stealth with a cheap shot. With Garrote, with Ambush. For PvP, this seems insane. For PvE, it sounds kind of cool. It will be quite interesting to see. I hope that it will be fairly reactive gameplay, because I can imagine if you're playing your spec and it's a random, unless there's some kind of big warning, you'll be like pressing your buttons and then suddenly you're in stealth and oh no, I've just ruined my rotation by hitting my stealth buttons. So you're going to have to do some interesting things with action bars swapping out and having very clever keybinds. I'm sure it's something you will get used to, but I'm also sure this will cause a lot of frustration for new players early on. Now, we're also getting new shadow abilities, removing generic rogue abilities, and another very cool ability is called Shadow Strike. Once again, PvP, I feel sorry for you clothies. Shadow Strike is like Shadow Step. You teleport through, like up to 40 yards, and you strike someone for massive deeps. Then they start attacking you, you strike over there. Yeah, Subtlety rogues, PvP, fun times. You're going to be always in stealth, always teleporting around the map. Interesting, but fantasy-wise, you've got to admit it is pretty cool. So, on the one hand, I'm like, gameplay, the balance, how do you do that? On the other hand, I'm like, that does sound really cool. I played a rogue at the start of the expansion. I was like, ooh, that sounds interesting. So, it's kind of a mixed bag. Again, once we get the more in-depth post, hopefully we can get our idea around the mechanics. If I ever get beta access, we'll be able to test it out that way and get around the mechanics, but most likely we're waiting for other people to give us that information. Major talent revision. Oh, one other thing, since I haven't got a slide for it. Shadow Priests. Okay, so that was my mind melting, because Shadow Priests are all about insanity. Shadow Priests will no longer use mana. Okay. They will no longer use Shadow Orbs. Okay. Shadow Priests are all about the Void. Ooh, spooky. What powers the Void? Old gods. What old gods? Insane. In the membrane. Nice achievement, mate. So the way that it will work is you will have an insanity bar, and as you keep casting your spells, you'll become more and more powerful, and your shadow form will get darker and darker, and then tentacles will burst out of your face. Literally out of your face. We've all seen that anyway. So you'll turn into this weird tentacle miscreant creation, becoming more and more powerful. Your insanity bar hits full. You hit like ultimate power. You face roll. Everything dies. You're like doing weird Cthulhu stuff. Then you slowly lose your insanity, because we mortals aren't meant to be insane all the time, apparently. So it's going to be this very interesting gameplay where you kind of like ramp up at key moments. So I imagine there's going to be quite a high skill ceiling to choosing when in a fight you go into crazy burst mode. We don't know if you'll like lose control of your character or anything when you reach max, or if there'll be any major like downside, if it's just like you reach max, then you peak too early, then you go back down. We don't have major mechanics, but that's really cool. It was way more than I expected. I was expecting just like a purple mana bar. No, you'll turn into a shadowy tentacle thing. Lovecraft fans, re-roll a Shadow Priest. Now, major talent revision. Fewer theme rows. Again, interesting, but I don't know how this will work in a balanced world. So if you currently look at the average WoW talent tree, it's like tier 15 is your movement stuff, this is your CC stuff, this is your AoE stuff, this is your single target stuff. They're reshuffling all the talents around. Now it won't just be like this is the mobility tier, it'll be like one mobility talent, one CC talent, one DPS talent, and all over the place. Now, the old issue with that kind of system was you just went CC, 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 CC if you're a PvP, and if you were ready you went damage, 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 damage. It seems like they're going backwards in the way they've sold it. So, yeah, I don't know what the balance will be. Yes, it will make the talents more interesting because each tier won't feel lame. In some case, you go, oh, this is a lame tree for raiding, or this is a lame tree for PvP. But interesting a lot of this stuff sounds really cool, very, very cool, but balance-wise, it seems kind of like backward steps. But anyway, more choices that matter. Well, obviously, because it'll break your spec completely. More spec-specific talent, so we're not going to have less. This is the mage stuff. It'll be each spec will have very unique talents, at least visually. So it might be very similar abilities, but with different skins. Big fan of that. That is one thing I can get behind without any complaints. And apparently there'll be hundreds of new talents. Apparently this new proposed change is so big that it is bigger than any previous talent system they've ever had before in WoW. With all the different changes for all the different classes. Yeah. Oh, and speaking of classes, Tri-Spec is confirmed. We're getting Tri-Spec. Druids, you're getting Cod Spec, and of course, Demon Hunters, you're getting just Dual Spec. So yeah, pretty interesting stuff. Classes are kind of looking potentially kind of broken, but I guess if everyone's broken, then everyone's happy, right? I'm TarkyCat. Thanks for watching. Sorry if the video was a bit all over the place, but you know, I'm just trying to get these videos up as quickly as possible for you guys. Subscribe for more BlizzCon coverage. Bye-bye.